DMV Download, the new daily podcast from WTOP News, is out now. Hosts Megan Clorty and Luke Garrett get the story behind the story.
Every weekday afternoon, Megan and I will go beyond the headlines with WTOP reporters and sources to bring you more on the biggest local stories impacting you, our fellow Washingtonians.
The DMV Download podcast is available now on all major podcast platforms. Subscribe today so you don't miss an episode. The DMV Download podcast is presented by Steamfitters Local 602.
Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Comedian Lewis Black brings his off-the-rails comedy tour to Warner Theater in Washington, D.C. this Friday and Saturday. I spoke to the famous angry comedian about growing up in the D.C. area and the current state of the world. Lewis Black, hey, thanks so much for joining us on WTOP.
My pleasure.
Now, we're talking because you're coming back to the Warner Theater on Friday, May 6th. And 7th, it's called the Off the Rails Tour. And man, after the last 2 years of pandemic and politics and everything, I couldn't think of a better comedian to come and, vent and shout in your great, hilarious, angry sort of vibe. Man, why do we call it Off the Rails?
I think it's obvious. We're completely off the rails. We're not even close to it. We're not even on the rails. We're just kind of the train went off the rails. Now we're driving on grass, and then we're spinning around. I mean, we're not even close to where we should be. Who comes through a pandemic, and at the end of the pandemic it's more crazy than it was in the midst of the pandemic in many ways. Come on, I mean, then we're fighting over stuff that is just completely ludicrous at times.
Yeah, it's so true. It's and if you'd think a once in a century, sort of global, devastating thing would be something maybe we could rally around, but leave it up to us to make it divisive and have half the people think it's real and half not, and go to town over it. I mean, come on.
Well, you just nailed it, because it's really. I used to joke about the fact that we were dealing, that we had a two-party system that was basically, initially they were dealing with different, points of view about the same reality, okay? Right. That's the way in which a democracy works. You have to share the reality, right? All right? The reason we're off the rails is because we are now living in two separate realities. We're arguing over what reality is. You can't do that. I did that on an LSD trip, and you learn a big lesson from that.
Right. You nailed it. We need that baseline of common facts, that, Walter Cronkite comes on, we all hear it. And then, we can have our Republican Democrat, arguments over policy and how we should interpret that. But now it's like Seinfeld. It's the real world and bizarro world. And I don't know I don't know how you square that. And we're operating on two different facts. I don't know how we square that.
Well, what you do is you start voting for adults, and maybe we have to test people of whether they actually are responsible adults now anymore, because there really seem to be very, very few. And, it's spectacular, and that's to be honest, one of the reasons I was born and raised around Washington and Silver Spring, Maryland, and one of the reasons I left was I couldn't sit there and the local news there is national news. All right? What goes on there if I would have been in front of Congress every day, basically barking on all fours at these people and probably nipping at their heels. I just couldn't handle watching that close what goes on there on a daily basis.
Yeah, you sort of, I guess you got out just in time.
Well, yeah, no, I beat him to the punch. I was out but I was gone by 22. I was like, this has been great. I'll see you around. Great place. It's a great place. I mean, if I wasn't born and raised there, I'd probably go live there.
Oh, we love it here. I mean, I grew up around here too, but it's insane. And it's just, I agree with you. It's so, just to see the these landmarks that you and I grew up around, like the Capitol building, suddenly getting, stormed by voters because they think it was an election fraud. Like I never thought I would see that. Like that's the stuff that's like in, White House Down, Olympus Has Fallen, like all these movies, and suddenly we're actually watching it, and people making excuses for it.
People saying it didn't happen.
Right, exactly. Or that,
and calling it a regular kind of just tourists coming to see the place. I mean, seriously, when I was a kid, you just walked up there and walked in. And granted, we've reached a point where we're beyond that because we think that we've lost it in terms of doing that, but we shouldn't be at the point where you just where you don't protect the White House. I mean, for starters, and nobody's explained it. No one. There's no explanation for it. None. It's been okay. They should be looking into what the hell went on there. But on the other thing, no one showed up. There doesn't seem to be any analysis of why no one showed up. It's almost impossible.
It's ridiculous. Well, I'm glad you got out at the right time. Let's talk about, you mentioned you grew up around Silver Spring area in DC. Didn't you also go to the University of Maryland for like a brief stint too?
Yeah, I went for a year, and it was like, probably 8 miles, 10 miles from my home, and I was living at home. I just couldn't do it. I mean, I really tried to get. I had bad counseling advice as a kid, so the schools that I applied to, I didn't get into, and then I went, okay, well, I'm going to go to Maryland, and then I transferred out. It was just too close to home. You can't live with your parents. I just couldn't do it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you're talking to a Maryland Terp alum, sir. So you friggin' traitor. I'm just kidding. You became a Tar Heel, right? You went down to Chapel Hill and
yeah,
cool. Very cool. And
I didn't become a Tar Heel. I don't understand no one knows what a Tar Heel is. I went to the University of North Carolina. It's like one of those, it's like, it's one of those things Vonnegut describes as a group of people who have gotten together, around something, and it's very nice. And I'm glad and people use it, but I still don't know what Tar Heel means.
But you went you didn't obviously set out to be a comedian. I know you got your master's at Yale School of Drama, and you wanted to, I guess, was the plan to do the acting thing before you got into comedy later?
The plan was to be a playwright. I was writing plays. I wrote a lot of plays. I wrote a lot of plays when I was at Chapel Hill, and then went on to write a bunch of plays up until the time I was about 40. And then I went back to it later on in the past 10 years, and have gotten some one-acts published and a full-length play that I had done around in a number of big theaters in the country, and that got published, and now it's being done in Bowie, Maryland, of all places.
Back
called
here.
One Slight Hitch, and it's being done there in I think July.
What's it about? What's One Slight Hitch about?
It's about it's basically about it takes place in the 80s, and it's about this woman who has to choose between either getting married or a career.
Well, that sounds really, really cool, and I'm glad that you've come full circle.
And it's a comedy, and it's a if you didn't know my name was on it, you wouldn't have known that I wrote it. It's a romantic comedy and a farce.
Wow, Lewis. Yeah, when you think Lewis Black, you think of romantic comedy. If this was Inside Out, you wouldn't play the romance emotion. You usually the anger emotion.
No, I wouldn't be playing happy.
I'm glad that you're A, versatile, and B, sort of bringing it back around to that initial love of playwriting. Like, so wait, but before you got into the comedy thing, now you've sparked me in talking plays. But did you have certain playwright idols or plays that you really dug on during those early studies?
Oh yeah, I mean, I liked, this is like now you can hear them turning they're going to a different station. This is where Innes leaves the room. I Chekhov I loved, and Beckett I loved, and Pinter I loved, and Sam Shepard I loved, and there are a ton of others that I could list. One of my first favorites was by John Osborne. It was called aptly enough, Look Back in Anger. it was about a guy. It was about this really, kind of this guy who was really, ticked off, but it was a kind of a working class drama. And then Herb Gardner's Thousand Clowns, which kind of was a model for me for a long time, which was just like, how was I going to deal with being in the real world and be able to manage to do what I wanted to do.
Well, maybe as you mentioned, so and so have left the chat. Bring them back now by talking.
We're back now. We're back now. We're out of the theater.
We had to plant the Chekhov's gun of comedy. It's going to explode later in the third act of this interview, I promise. But tell me about how did that's the best I got, dude.
That's good.
How do we get and we got to pay it off at the end. So how did we how did you actually do? You said you're around 40s. You got into comedy. How'd that actually happen?
Well, I mean, I was doing stand up on the side. I was running a theater, basically a theater bar. We were doing one acts and doing all sorts of music, and we were right off of Broadway here in New York City, a place called the West Bank Cafe. Downstairs there was like 100-seat bar and a theater and a small little stage, and I would open for every show and I'd been doing stand up on and off, but literally I was doing it for fun. It was just kind of like I got a kick out of it. It was a way that I could write some stuff and get it up there without having to write a play. And then all of a sudden, and I was always fascinated by comics. I watched a ton of them, and Carlin and Bruce and Pryor and Lily Tomlin and a ton of others really got me. Really I kind of was fascinated by what they were doing. So I was fooling around with it, and then when I was introducing these shows, and then we were doing a stand-up on Saturdays. We would do these shows with music and comedy, and I was hosting and performing at those, and it took off. I mean, people liked the stand-up more than they liked the plays, and that became kind of the way it. And then I finally had this play I thought was going to be the one that would break through, and instead it was a miserable experience that I had in Houston, and then I ended up going down and working at a comedy club in Houston, and I went, and they offered me a gig there for the same amount of money that I made as a playwright. I'd be working there 1 week as opposed to spending 2 years writing a play as I had been, and I'd get the same amount of money. I'd stay in a nicer hotel, and I was dealing with drunks rather than intellectuals, and I just went, okay, I'm amazed the drunks are treating me nicer, so I moved on.
Yeah, if the pay's equal and you get drunks treating, let's hang with the friends in low places for a while. They're gonna make.
And it worked out well because essentially I became the actor of my own stuff and went on stage. And then I got lucky. That's the way it goes. I got to be on Conan and the Daily Show and did a bunch of stuff for Comedy Central, and things just kind of went nuts.
Yeah, you mentioned the Daily Show, and it's kind of timely because, the great Jon Stewart just got honored with the Mark Twain Prize at the Kennedy Center like 2 days ago or something.
Yes, he did, and then I guess it'll be on, I don't think it's been on TV yet. It'll be on TV soon.
Yeah, they usually tape it and then air it like a month later on PBS. Yeah. But just speak to A, how deserving he is for that. I mean, I think it was about time he got that award. But B, just your experience working with him too. Like those Back in Black segments were legendary on Daily Show.
Well, thank you, and we're still doing them. I've been doing it I'm doing it until they realize I'm still there, and go, wait a minute, what's he doing? So I've been doing it for 25 years. I started with Kilborn, and I'm still doing it with Trevor.
Oh, that's great. And how's Trevor, holding down the fort since John? I mean, it's got to be hard to step into those shoes, but he's doing it.
Yeah, he is. He's doing a good job. This is you can hear that one of my agents is calling right now. And
do you need to bounce right now, or
No. It's literally. I'll find out who called. It's probably, what it is. It's my. I think it's it's a prescription or it's a spam, and somebody's telling me that I own a car and I don't own a car.
I could cut it out or leave it in there. A couple months ago, I was interviewing Gilbert Gottfried, rest in peace. This was just a couple months ago, and a fire alarm kept going off in his hotel. But he, like the hilarious guy he is, just kept going and was riffing with it. He's like, "I'm burning a lot." I mean, it was great. So maybe we'll leave the phone. Maybe we won't.
You can see it, but if it works, if it's funnier than the other stuff, leave it in. Gilbert was that was a great loss. I knew him a bit and spent time with him and his family, and rough. It's just he was one of those, like, he was a foul-mouthed angel is what he was. He was great.
Yeah. Oh, now he is a foul-mouthed angel. Yeah. Well, I mean, in general, though, it's been wow. Now that I think about it, Gilbert Gottfried, Bob Saget, Louis Anderson, Norm Macdonald. It's been a rough year for comedians.
Yeah, it has been. It's not good, and it's the really just some really great ones, all unique in their own fashion.
Absolutely. Well, what else? I mean, there's so much more we could talk about in your career, but I know we've kept you. We definitely.
Well, that's all right. What were we? Wait, we were onto something there for a second.
Before the phone rang, we were talking about the Daily Show and Trevor.
Oh yeah, no. With Trevor Noah, he seems. I mean, the thing is that he started it and it's gone well. I mean, I've enjoyed working with all of them. I'm kind of my own. I mean, they bring me in when they want me, and. I think that he got, that having to leave the studio and all had pushed him into a different space. Now we're going back into the studio. I think that'll make a difference. I think being in that studio with an audience is huge. And we didn't go back. We moved to the thing, I think that we moved to a office building and started doing stuff in there, which worked out okay. But really, it's the last place you should be doing comedy is in an office building, okay? Unless you're doing, TikTok videos for some, sort of. Here's how, you're doing TikTok videos of how hellish an office can be. So you're down to your short version of The Office.
Yeah, unless you got Michael Scott there with you, it's kind of hard to make an office.
It was, but Trevor in his own way has done well. I mean, I've worked for all of them. I just my thing has always been, they never auditioned me for that, to be in that chair, and that's always been like you don't have to hire me, just pretend like okay, that didn't work, as opposed to deciding that it wasn't gonna work. Just just kind of like just do it as a courtesy. I've been on the show for years, but it's worked out fine, and it's been great, and I'm certainly not complaining at all, because they wouldn't have given me the job anyway.
I mean, it feels like that show could go on forever, and Back in Black could go on. Those segments could go forever because just wait 2 months and Putin invades a country. I mean, there's always some sort of event going on that you're never going to be tired.
Well, I mean, it was when they discovered finally, and it has a lot to do with the explosion of cable television, is when they discovered that politics is funny.
Right.
And social satire is funny. It wasn't just politics, that they didn't get the idea that social satire was funny too.
And Jon Stewart, I mean, that you yourself, what really flipped everything was like realizing that when they're tuning into your satire show, which obviously is satire, but sometimes I feel like sometimes you get a clearer picture of what's going on and it's talked straighter to you than the quote cable news channels. Like when that flipped, I think we were in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, that's what happened. It was when when essentially it's when the reason we could kind of came out is being the ones to look toward is because the news was already, it was just pointing to the fact that news was already becoming satiric.
Right.
That somebody would come on, they would say something, then they would deny saying it. Then we'd show them a tape of him saying it. Joke's over. Let's move on to the next subject.
Yeah, exactly. And didn't Stewart go on with it was like Tucker Carlson on Crossfire and called them out and said we need you guys, and then they got canceled. And now we've seen what's happened with that career. It's like I think of your Glenn Beck has Nazi Tourette's thing.
Well, yeah, the greatest one is that thing of his. For those who haven't watched it, was the advertisement for his the other show he's doing, which was about this thing. He was doing a thing about men and about we're not being manly enough and we're losing our testosterone. And he actually have a guy tanning his genitals. Okay. They actually show. I mean, it's like, first off, I never thought of it. Second off, why would you want people to know about it? Who's doing that? Why isn't that a psychiatric problem? Who the hell is spending that much time looking at their genitals, going, boy, what a nice tan? It's madness. Man, hello. That's where it comes from. Men are losing their. You're baking your genitals, and then you expect to have testosterone. Is anybody? I don't know how the system really works down there, but I got a good idea, and I don't think baking your pad really helps.
And so we're not going to have a pad baking tanning segment at Warner Theater, are we? Please.
No, but I tell you what you will have is I'm going to talk about what it is the story of me in the pandemic, and I didn't respond well, and I started doing it on the road and started talking about it when I hit the road again, and I thought it was basically I was going to do that for a while and see where it led, and it led to it'll be my next special, which I'll be shooting later on after the Warner is kind of the final tune-up, so the folks will be seeing it, and that's why I'm really pleased about doing it there because about doing that final tune-up there, and because it was great to do the special Red, White, and Screwed we shot there, and I've always had I've loved the Warner. I loved working on that stage, and I think that was really maybe my best special. It was really so going back there to work on this is great, and at the end we'll be doing the Rant is Due, which is a live feed that goes throughout the United States, it goes throughout the world. And what I do is and I'm, folks out there who are listening, go to lewisblack.com. You can find out how you can basically hear some of the Rantcast and hear what I ask is the audience writes in. They can either ask me a question, but what I'm really looking for is their comments about living in D.C. or in the suburbs, or what any kind of yelling or screaming they've got to do about Maryland or their lives, or if there's a jelly that irritates them, or they don't like chunky peanut butter, whatever. It can be from the ridiculous to the sublime to the serious, to the damning, and I'll pick the ones that were kind of come out of that area, and it'll be a live feed that goes throughout the world. It'll be the Washington D.C. show, and I'll do it 2 nights.
Where is this? On your website?
No, well, you can find it on my website. I'm going to do it that night.
Oh, awesome. That's going to be great.
No, but they can find out how to do it at the website, where to send it at lewisblack.com. Then that night, I pick out the ones and put them together in this show. After I finish my show, I come back on stage live. Again, yes, because I'm still alive. And then I come back on stage and do that show, which is called the Rant is Due, which is a separate show, which is basically my version of a very low-tech TV show, but that's high-tech in the sense that it goes throughout the world. They watch it in Thailand, they watch it in Korea, they watch it, depending on what any given night, we'll find somebody else be watching. That New Zealand was last week. You just never know when people are going to pick up on it.
That sounds fantastic. Well, let's do final seconds. We promised that there would be a Chekhov's gun of laughter that's going to explode by the end. So let's end. You mentioned that this show is a lot to do with Lewis Black, that the quote angry comedy cooped up in a pandemic. I can't imagine you bouncing off the walls. What was it like? Were you pulling your hair out these last?
I was in solitary confinement for almost 12 weeks, and it really took a toll because I just lost my mind. As I say to the audience after 20 minutes, you've only been with me 20 minutes. Imagine what it's been like to be with me for literally 12 weeks, and they get it.
Are you shouting at yourself in the mirror, just talking?
Oh yeah, no, I was pointing a finger at myself, screaming, because your brain can only entertain it so much. I mean, it entertains itself so much, and when it's done entertaining itself, it comes after you. It comes after you. It's solitary confinement is a punishment. and it's really unbelievable. So you kind of you know, it's like being you're literally the last 10 weeks I was in solitary. It was like the Nuremberg trials in my head about myself. Here's how you failed. Here's how you screwed up. Here's another bad relationship. Here's why you don't have children. Oh, you wanted to have a career? Well, look at your life now, you schmuck.
The guy in the mirror is yelling back at you too.
Yes, exactly.
Oh my gosh, that sounds terrifying, but also
but it's funny.
Hilariously.
It's actually funny, you know, when you think on a daily basis, when you're kind of going, well, I don't know if I'm going to die of COVID or Clorox poisoning.
Let's inject.
I mean, and I really wasn't sure how this would work, but I don't think people really, we don't talk about it a lot. You know, there's this and that and the other, and I think you know, it's I'm gonna get it. It's kind of bookends with the other special I did, which was the night before we went into shutdown. You know, really, literally, where shows were being cut off. The last show I did, we did as a special called. You know, thanks for risking your life. This is kind of, and this is the story that follows. That one ends me going home, and then I pick up with me being home, and then that'll be that, and I'll move on to and then I'll try to catch up with how this nonsense that is unfolding will be, and then I'll be back on the road yelling and screaming some more about other stuff.
That'll be a cool bookend. Yeah, the contrast between those two of last night before everything shut down, and now you coming out of it's going to be, it'll be striking, the contrast.
Well, it's going to be fun to be at the Warner, and I look forward to it.
Awesome. Again, everyone, it's Lewis Black, the hilarious Lewis Black, on the Off the Rails comedy show. It's going to be at Warner Theater Friday, May 6th and Saturday, May 7th. So get your tickets now. Hey, always a pleasure. I think this is probably the third time you've been on with us, and we appreciate it every single time.
Well, I appreciate it. It's fun to be on WTOP. I've known those call letters from the very beginning. So it's a pleasure, and take care of yourself. And folks, there's still really great seats. Grab them, and I really look forward to seeing everybody.
All right. Take care, man.
Thank you. Thanks, Jason. Have a good day.
You too.
Stay tuned for my other two chats with Lewis Black, but first, a plug for a fellow WTOP podcast.
DMV Download, the new daily podcast from WTOP News, is out now. Hosts Megan Clorty and Luke Garrett get the story behind the story.
Every weekday afternoon, Megan and I will go beyond the headlines with WTOP reporters and sources to bring you more on the biggest local stories impacting you, our fellow Washingtonians.
The DMV Download podcast is available now on all major podcast platforms. Subscribe today so you don't miss an episode. The DMV Download podcast is presented by Steamfitters Local 602.
Welcome back to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley, and we're back with another chat with Lewis Black, who joined me in 2015 to discuss his Let Freedom Laugh tour at Warner Theater.
Lewis, thanks for joining us on WTOP.
My pleasure.
Now, before we get into your show, you're a local guy, right? Aren't you from Silver Spring?
I'm from the old Silver Spring, not the new, modern, unbelievably, boy, there's a lot to do here, Silver Spring.
How has it changed for you? I mean, I assume you've been back to the new and can compare the new to the old.
Well, there was a company called Hex there. There was one store. There was it was like a village in comparison to what has become a major city. There's the difference. We went from nothing to huge. The metro made a big change in terms of that.
Sure, absolutely. Have you been? Do you still come back often, or just when your show comes?
As far as Silver Spring goes, I'm there. Probably, I've still got friends who are around there, and I'm there about once a year, and then. And my folks are now have moved outside of Baltimore, so I'm down there twice a year.
Do you mind if I ask what high school it was?
Oh yeah, Springbrook.
Oh, nice. Didn't someone else rather well-known come from Springbrook, or am I thinking of a different... Was it Goldie Hawn or Ben Stein, or someone came out of it?
Ben Stein, I think, and Goldie Hawn went to Blair.
Oh, okay.
It's not as good a school, really, at the time.
Okay, but you didn't know them back then, did you?
No, I didn't even know I was going to end up doing what I was doing.
Do you still pinch yourself every now and then? Do you, the little boy from Silver Spring, now when you're on stage, do you pinch yourself when you're performing comedy?
I'm still stunned by the fact of what's gone on, yeah. that at my face is, that I've played the Warner Theater and more than a number of times, that I've done an HBO special out of there. That, it's still like, somebody's got to be kidding me. I thought I'd end up teaching theater. That's what I thought I'd do.
How did that happen? If you look back over your life, if there was one big major moment where your trajectory changed?
It was mostly just it didn't really the trajectory was that I was going to write plays, and I did this stand-up thing on the side for fun. To just kind of get my writing, heard, because you wait around for them to do a play of yours. It takes, years sometimes. So I just kind of started doing it on the side, and then that's where the end. People went, oh, they seem to like that more than they like the playwriting. So I ended up following that path. and the real change came when I just made the decision that I started going on the road and found that I liked it and that they paid you. That made a big difference because I didn't really just switch over till I was 40.
Right.
So it was really, so I was about as broke as you could be.
Yeah. Is that rare? I mean, I do feel like a lot of people go into stand-up, in their 20s or something. I mean, do we talk about that, like making that change, at 40?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is kind of rare. I think Rodney Dangerfield, it started later also, but I had been doing it on and off, and then once I focused on it, and I just kind of, and it was kind of like I was at a bit of time when it was, it was a good time to really, there was still a good time to go on the road.
Right. Where are you based out of now? Where are we calling from right now?
New York. I can't do Los Angeles. It makes me insane.
They are two different types of people. Why do you think you can fit in the New York crowd a little better?
Well, I mean, it's just a real city. It's got, and you can walk around, and it's got a center to it. It's a city. Los Angeles is a series of suburbs strung around roads. I mean, it's a completely different place.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a driving town.
It's a driving town, and to be honest, part of the thing was just having come from Maryland, and once they built the Beltway, it was enough with the driving.
Yeah, it's very similar. I think I caught one of your shows, I don't know if it was a TV special or something, where you were in Atlanta and you came out and said, "Well, nice to see you got the traffic worked out." So, it made me think of DC as well. I mean, the traffic here is brutal.
The amazing thing is that moment. Because I have a tour bus. That moment when you come into Virginia now and out of D.C. on I think it's 95
or 66, one of them. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's 95, 60, where they all becomes just like a spaghetti loop, and it's more traffic than I ever imagined being there.
So you like the New York model of being able to walk out of your apartment, walk through whatever Greenwich Village or whatever, and get on the subway.
You can walk a couple of miles, and you're at the from one end to the other. It's not now in this frost-bitten tundra it's become, but generally, most of the time you can get out and you can walk and see things. I never really enjoyed driving. I was a lousy driver. I even talk about it in my act now. I was terrible.
Yeah, let's get into your act a little bit. So when you come to, you're coming to the Warner Theater here, I know you said you've played it several times before, but if our listeners have seen you there before, sell it to them to come back again. What incentive is there? How's the show different this time around as opposed to previous time?
I mean, first off, I don't have to do it all on my own, which is great, and I'm accompanied by her actually, and I'm kind of in the presence of two tremendous comedians. The word icon, legend, it just is. You kind of hate those words because it means they've. To me, those words don't really encompass. These are Tom Smothers and Dick Gregory, who were. two of the most kind of outspoken comics of their time, and they're still and still are funny.
Right.
I mean, because to call them an icon of legend means, well, they came and then they did it. I think, it's the fact is these two guys are still. I worked with Dick Gregory and Tom Smothers. We did this benefit in Arizona where the first monument to the Bill of Rights was really built, and we raised the money there. And the two of them were stunning. And then there's four other comedians working, and it's Dick Gregory, Tom Smothers, Cristela Alonso, Ahmed Ahmed, John Fugelsang, Chris Bliss, and all of them are terrific.
Do you remember when you first encountered Tom Smothers, Smothers Brothers?
Oh yeah, first when they were him and his brother would show up on TV just doing their 5 to 7 minutes on either one of the late shows or Ed Sullivan to date myself. Really
no such thing.
But they would show up and do their act, and it was the smart brother and the dumb brother, and and kind of like a Burns and Allen kind of a thing to really date myself, and then
no.
And but actually, people should, I mean, I always think it's not a matter of people are, because of the 12 billion videos now that people can watch of cats. People lose sight of the fact that there's this whole collection of videos out there of some of the most brilliant comedy ever done, and they were and then they morphed into the Smothers Brothers show, which was the extraordinary at the time.
No.
It was outspoken. It was dangerous. It was edgy. It was everything that Saturday Night Live claims to be in some cases, but I think they hit it on the mark. It was called Right Place, Right Time, and they spoke to the moment.
Absolutely, and I love your point. I have actually echoed this a ton to some my peers about just how technology has almost erased time in a way where there's all the dumb cat videos you mentioned on YouTube, but you can also pull up a stand-up act from whenever. Really, you can watch Richard Pryor with a click of a button as fast as you can watch House of Cards or whatever. That notion of time's almost erased, and I think that's actually pretty great, especially in
you do.
Comedy.
You now have access to all of it,
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is extraudinary.
There's even people who, on their way to Warner Theater, could look up your stuff and, get a little primer.
Yeah. They could look up, basically if they want to know what I'm going to be doing, it'll be similar to what I've been doing over the past 25, 30 years. It's, my act is basically, the stuff that I'm going to be doing is stuff that is probably it's about what's going on in Washington now, which I just find to be beyond belief, and the fact that I'll talk about coming from there, and I'm hosting, which is an unusual place to be because a host is usually someone who's got to be nice, and it's really irritating. It irritates me that I have to be nice for a while. When because you kind of got to make sure that the next guy up gets a fighting chance, but
exactly.
You don't want to screw it up for them by being a prick. So
exactly.
I look forward. And I haven't really figured out. I've got a couple of hours material that I've been doing on the road for the past couple of years that's new, and it's just a question of what from there I'll be doing. And then they're shooting it as a special, so that'll be on Access TV, and I have to kind of tailor it somewhat for television, only in the sense of trying to figure out what material do I want to let go of and can't do in the next special.
Yeah, exactly. And you're tailoring it for TV, and you're also tailoring it for Washington. You have your material you take nationwide, but in terms of DC, how do you go about streamlining it to maybe a couple more DC political jokes, or are there certain?
Well, that's easy, because I was born and raised around there, and so it's I watched it as a kid, and I watched the changes, and and the fact that I'm just quite simply, when I was a kid, the government worked better, and I believe it worked better because a lot of those people were drunks, and apparently alcohol made it easier for them to sit down and talk and get stuff done. So,
is that true? Is that true for stand-up comedy too? Have a couple before you go on?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay.
I can't. There are people who do.
Right.
I can't, because if I drink before a show, the anger becomes real.
Yes, you're kind of part of your whole act is a lot of the, at least people maybe who've seen maybe Back in Black on the Daily Show or whatever have seen it. It's a lot of that shouting, angry humor. How did you find your voice in that style? Because it works totally.
Well, because it took a long time, but it takes a long time sometimes to figure out what it is that what it is that makes you funny. Mm-hmm. And I'm funny. It turns out I'm funniest when I'm angry, and whatever that persona is that I throw out there is people find funny, and a lot of the times, they come just to see me get angry. They don't really care what I'm saying, and I don't. If that's what they want to see, great. It's kind of it's like, in a sense, it's like, a great physical comic. Not that I'm a great angry guy, but that a physical comic, people who come and they may not, what they came to laugh at is their ability to do slapstick, and my ability is to implode.
Exactly. So sometimes do you think that can save a joke? Sometimes maybe it's not. Maybe it's even the weakest part of your show, maybe like your least favorite joke.
It saved many a joke.
Just ratchet.
And in part, I've discovered the fact that when something doesn't work, sometimes I'll yell at the audience because I know it's their fault, and sometimes I'll yell at myself because I know it's my fault.
Is there a little? Do you have a preview? Not actually any punchlines, but in terms of which figures of DC politicians or anything you might be covering?
Oh yeah, the President Obama, the ones that the main ones, President Obama and Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi and John Boehner and the delightful and always very smiley Mitch McConnell, Ted Cruz. Maybe we'll touch on Bachman, Rick Perry. Who's certainly not, well, they're not Washington, but they're certainly, they're still very funny.
Do you find that today's state of politics is easier to get enraged over for your jokes?
Oh, yeah. I found the one thing in the last 25, 30 years is it gets easier all the time. What's difficult is to try to find the humor within the rage, because they really have gone beyond. They have. I just, when I watch them talk, and they say, and this is the way the American people feel. They have no clue as to how the American people feel. They're literally the saddest thing that's occurred in Washington, and they're completely. Don't even recognize it. They're in a bubble.
Mm-hmm,
they're in a bubble that is like Stephen King's The Dome. They are really in there. They can't apply enough sealant between themselves and their public. 34% of the American people go out to vote, which is less than voted during World War II when we were at war.
Right.
And they consider, and they don't, and they're not ashamed of it.
Yeah.
But you hear no one in either party speaking about how shameful that is.
Yeah.
That they rendered the American public, better than any enemy has done. They rendered them immobile.
Right.
They rendered them. They made it. The American public did not want to go out and vote. People, the less people voted in World War II because they were fighting a war in order so that these people could go vote.
Yeah.
And then these idiots come along and they go, you know what? It's not even worth your time.
Yeah.
And then we elect the same group of schmucks.
Exactly.
So, yeah, that's the kind of stuff I'll be doing.
See, he's getting fired up over his morning coffee just like he's going to be on stage.
I knew eventually we'd reach it.
Well, now you're awake. No, it's true. With your act, it's almost like we have to laugh to keep from crying with some of that stuff. It's serious. I mean,
because the truth is that it reads like, it doesn't read like news. It reads like satire.
Right.
It reads like someone is writing a fictional account.
Absolutely.
If you wake up and look at that newspaper as if it's fiction, it's funny.
It's true. Am I reading The Onion or an actual paper right now? It's hard to tell sometimes.
I mean,
yeah.
ISIL has 30,000 troops.
Right.
That's how many troops they have, 30,000.
Yeah.
With 300 million Americans.
Right.
There are a gazillion Chinese. There are a ton of Indians. There's there's 30,000 troops.
Yeah.
It's not a big group.
Right.
You want to worry about the guys who are going over there and they're coming back and they're taking time bombs. I get that, but don't tell me that the world can't get together a force that can beat 30,000 troops.
Right.
It's absurd.
Why can't we pool our resources here?
I mean, it is. It's just absurd. You go, what? Because when I read that number, I was like, because it reads like, boy, they're everywhere. Boy, they're coming out of the woodwork. Boy, there's a billion of them. They're just like termites. Well, no, they're 30,000.
Right.
It reads like a joke.
Right. Well, and there's your material right there. You don't even have to write it sometimes. It writes itself.
No, you don't have to write it. It's literally as if, as a friend of mine has said, that it's like Kurt Vonnegut is writing it.
Absolutely. It's Slaughterhouse. Some of our listeners, maybe they've seen you at the Warner Theater before, or maybe they've just caught you, in snippets like Back in Black with The Daily Show. I actually just had the chance to interview Jon Stewart when he was touring with Rosewater, and we didn't know he was going to be leaving at the time. But
Right.
Do you mind saying a few words on Jon Stewart and your interactions with him? I mean, now that he's stepping down, I mean, just any final thoughts?
I thought it was incredible to be involved in that run with him, and that I have enjoyed working with him. I've enjoyed watching him work. I mean, he's more talented in the way that, in the same sense that Stephen Colbert is more talented than that show is. Mm-hmm. That his ability to work that show, that there are other things that he is just as capable of doing, and I think that he'll move on to something else and be just as brilliant at it, which is really, to someone like myself, irritating to watch. But it's a pleasure. It was a pleasure working with him and spending time with him. I do think it's smart of him to step down at this point, because it's an exhausting. There just comes a point when you're doing that sort of thing that it's not that it's not fun anymore. It's just you've run the same track over and over and over again. And it's time to go. I got as much as I could. What I think it boils down to? Growth.
Yeah, you want to keep challenging yourself. Yeah.
And he's not. It's not like he's 75. He's a young guy who needs to who wants to grow, and he's grown as far as he can. His size 36 pants don't fit anymore.
That's a good analogy. Hey, and it's if you haven't seen any of Lewis Black's stuff on the Daily Show clips, you guys got to look it up. One of my favorites was when you did the Glenn Beck has Nazi Tourette's. I thought it was just brilliant.
Well, thanks. That's what's the great thing about working on that show too, is you've got these terrific writers that work with you, and you've got a whole group of editors. That editing group is the ones who work behind the scenes are brilliant.
How does that work? So, if, say, for instance, you would come on for a little segment, you're writing your material, but also with their team of writers for those segments, or how does that work?
Because John really. John puts together the show, and they find some topic they want me to go off on, and so they essentially write the first draft of it, because I'm traveling around so much, I'm not available, and they write the first draft, and I come I come back in, and then I work through the first draft with them. We come up with a second draft, and then we take it to John and go through a third draft, and then we go out and we basically, or they may even do a fourth draft on their own, and where I may throw some stuff out that I've thought of. And then we go there. We run it with the clips and stuff, and then without an audience, we go through it once more. Then we take it into John, and then the whole group, the senior producers and John, then go through it again, and then we're on the air.
Gotcha. Compare that to what you'll be doing here this weekend. Is there a different energy to doing it live? Because, I mean, even The Daily Show was taped. So, I mean,
well, the nice thing about the Daily Show is it's there is a live audience, so
right.
You get a taste of that. The difference is that it's just me, and I'm not in that. I'm not a part of the Daily Show. It's just me. So the energy is different in the sense that I can, and also if you're not shooting just for a camera, that I'm in there with 2,000 people.
Right, exactly. Do you
all of a sudden it's a different leap of energy.
Do you usually get good audience reaction in DC? How's our Funny Bone compared to other cities?
It's great. I mean, it really is. It has and it will continue to be. It's a great comedy town, and initially a lot of great people have come out of there, and people who you don't even know of because they went on to become writers and producers in Los Angeles. So, that I've kind of kept, a bit of it in touch with over the years, and. I mean, the only time that D.C. sucks as a comedy town is that the Congressional Correspondents' Dinner or the White House, the writers, the guys who cover the White House, that dinner. There's two of them, and I did one of them. And it's, you get all those people in a room, and it's like, and they're a pain in the neck. They're not, you want a diverse group of people in the room. It's like if you do that with any group, as soon as you put all the people in one company doing corporate events, all the people in one company are in the same room. They're all Catholics in the same room, all Jews in the same room. It just doesn't work as well.
Well, it's like that bubble you're talking about,
Yeah, it is. But boy, do they have sticks placed firmly up there, stuff there. But because it's really, I mean, I did one, and I've said it, I had to turn, and there's Mitch McConnell sitting literally two seats to my left. I'm on the dais, and he can't crack a smile. He won't crack a smile. And you kind of go, wow. Are you serious?
Yes, too serious.
Yeah, I mean, it's, and there also is when you do stuff politically in Washington, there's always like, well, I know what funny is. You don't know what funny is. Right. But then again, they don't go out and talk what the rest of the country thinks is funny.
Right. Well, that's hopefully you can split the difference and you can share what we all think is funny.
I hope so, or we're screwed. There'll be no Bill of Rights around the country.
Exactly. Hey, Louis, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for your time. I know that Chris appreciates it. I appreciate it, and we have just a few hundred seats left to sell, and I'd love to sell it out. So thank you.
Thanks so much for coming on WTOP.
My pleasure. I listened to that station as a kid. It was the big station, and it was kind of the legit station in Washington, way back when, and it wasn't the music station. It was the station where you went and got actual information and facts. And it was a big part of it was WTOP radio and television. It was huge. Yeah. At the time, it was huge, and it was at the time when when we had less sources of information and actually more accurate information.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we help cut through some of the BS like you're trying to do. So.
Well, tell them they better, or I'll kick their
ass. All right. Hey, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you. Take care. Have a good day.
I also spoke with Louis Black in 2018 ahead of his This Joke's on Us tour, also at Warner Theater.
Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Yeah, well, that's what we do.
Part of the deal.
It's part of the deal.
Part of the deal.
If somebody can figure out how to advertise things again, it would be really great. That doesn't seem. You see, you have to go and really go to every possible place you can possibly go. It would be 20 years ago if you went on, and not, if you went on the WTOP radio 20 years ago, everybody go, wow, and now it's like just because it's so fragmented, it's like. That you just got to try to find all the ways you can to get to people. Because I'll show up in a town. I'll show up in a smaller town where there's really nothing going on,
right?
And be walking down the street, and this sign on the theater has my name, and people will look at me and say, "What are you doing here?"
It's a coincidence.
Yeah, I just happened to be. I'm sightseeing.
You were sightseeing and saw your own name and thought you'd go check out your own show.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're going to get the word out on this, I promise. It's called the Jokes on Us Tour. Obviously, I have some ideas on what that infers to, but what do you mean by that? Why is the joke on all of us these days?
Well, it's kind of like I keep trying to come up with titles that describe somewhat where we're at, and now we've kind of, we've kind of reached that point. Then you turn on the TV, and I don't care what side you're on. And you just kind of look and go, "Wow," and it's hard. It's like the joke's already been written.
You just have to say what's going on in the news, and it's already funny.
It is. I mean, it's like if it's not one thing, it's another thing, and then if it's not another thing, it's another thing. And then when you try to top it, somebody tops it for you.
Yeah. Truth stranger than fiction.
Yeah, so it is, it's what it, when you read it, just, I've got the poster that really I have out for this thing is, the Jokes on Us Tour, President renders comics obsolete.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, you seriously have no shortage of material. We have porn star settlements. We have Russian interference and investigations. And what topics do you tackle during the show?
Well, it always depends, somewhat on what's happened that day, and then, I do tackle health care because I just had I was sick last summer, and I was in a hospital which is in Ireland, which is they're always screaming about boy those kind of healthcare systems. Ours is the best. Well, no, okay.
Yeah.
And we're yelling about it, and most people have never been to the others, okay?
Right.
And they have the same equipment, you schmuck. So, it's so that I talk about that a bit. I talk about the the tax stuff. I talk about why it's difficult. What we were just talking about, why it's difficult to be funny, in part that about this stuff, and how come, because I've been, I was born and raised, I moved to New York 40 years ago and started making jokes about him. And I've been making jokes about him for 40 years, and I'm tired of it.
How does that work? That's a good point. So you've been cracking jokes on the same subject matter of the same public figure for those, that long. How has that sort of evolved? I mean, like, you don't want to tap into the same material over and over again, but as he continues to rise, you have more to work with.
Well, yeah, but he also gives you this stuff. Those tweets are really, it's like, I've said it before. Every so often, there's one tweet in particular that I'll read, but that I realized early on, you turned on the news and they were reading the tweets, and first off, it's not news,
right?
Okay, he's talking to his to those who were who voted for him. That's who he's talking to. So this isn't news. So I don't need somebody to tell me what it is that he said. You don't need to read it for me. I can read. You don't need to have people discussing what it meant. I can pretty much see what it meant, and you're taking away my job.
Let me read it.
My job is, if it's something about, 3 Americans are coming back from North Korea. That's one thing. That's kind of at least in the news area.
Right.
But if you're calling, if you've got, if you're proclaiming stuff about how somebody looks, or that Mexicans are eating all the avocados and we can't let them across the border anymore, whatever it is, I get to read that stuff because a lot of what he writes is not policy; it's pathology.
Right.
And that's what I did. And what irritates me no end is some of the audience members will get upset about that I treated him in the fact that there's a pathology going on. Well, there's anybody elected to that office. There's a pathology going on, and that's my job. That's part of my job. Do I want to do that all the time? No, but they all show up with some sort of idiocy.
Right.
Every one of them has in my lifetime. I've talked about each and every one of them. But the constant is Congress, where in the last 25 years, because they've really shown that there are 12,000 ways for us to get nothing done.
Seriously. It almost doesn't matter who's in there and who's in control.
Yeah, and I'm tired of it. Don't tell me what the other side did when you didn't have power. I'm sick of it. I don't care. Just okay, that's done. We can move on now. Your agenda is not the most important thing on earth. What is important is your agenda and the other agenda, and finding between them a third agenda that somehow uses a bit of each agenda. That's the deal. Everything else is nonsense.
Right. Well, and you know what you're talking about because you grew up around here, around the whole political scene. Graduated. Let's see. You were born in D.C. Grew up in Silver Spring, Springbrook High School. How's it changed around here since even when you come back to visit D.C., like just looking around, how much has the whole landscape changed?
Well, it's changed by nature of the Silver Spring is a different place. When I was there was nothing there. Now it's like they discovered oil somewhere. A lot of it has to do with. It's why it's so insane that these idiots who are in Congress don't get the concept of how important public transportation is, because, granted, I know from, all the readings that, the subways are in disarray now, apparently, in the city, but the fact is that, Bethesda changed, all of these places changed once those stops were put in, all of them.
Yeah, definitely.
They all became destinations. How these morons missed that is beyond me, but they've always missed it. That Congress sat for years. One of the big things for me was always is that the Washington Post would have this picture every year or so of, the slums that were, the area behind Congress, which was some of the worst. They would say, here are the worst slums in the world. And they were spitting distance from Congress. They're looking at them every day, and they did nothing. It's just beyond. It's like nothing penetrates them.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, no, it's like they're wearing, they all have like metal in their heads.
What was that? There was was it a Christmas Vacation or something? There was a line, I think Randy Quaid had the metal in his head, and he said, "It's great, but every time my wife turns the microwave on, I piss myself and forget who I am for half an hour." When he said that, that's what. All right, let's bring it back around. I know you. So you graduated Springbrook, and I think you initially wanted to be a playwright or a theater teacher.
Right. Yeah.
And you kind of fell into stand-up comedy later in life than a lot of people. I think you were around 40. How'd that actually happen?
Well, it happened because I realized I couldn't be I couldn't be broke for my whole life. So it boiled down to that. It was kind of something I was doing on the side, and then I was running this room in New York City with some other guys, and we were doing a lot of theater in there. A little 100-seater that's still there called the West Bank Cafe, and I was working there starting in my early 30s, and it was going. And we were having a ball, and we were producing people like, Aaron Sorkin, Alan Ball.
Wow.
Some really, there are others. There's a whole list of folks whose work was done there, and actors, and I would open every show. I'd be the host, an MC, and kind of say what was coming up and talk about stuff, and then all of a sudden, that people started paying attention to that.
That's funny. You said that's funny. You went into stand-up not to be broke. That's
yeah, because all of a sudden that was they were attracting. People said you want to come over. There's a place called Catch a Rising Star at that point, and you want to come on over here and do your stuff. And I was like, guys, I don't know. And then I was kind of doing it on the side, so I tried it initially when I got to New York, and it didn't work out. And I would do shows on my own, and then they called, so I went over, and then I started, I started working over there, and the people were Kevin Meaney, really great, the late great Kevin Meaney, and Mario Cantone, Dennis Leary.
Wow.
Rosie O'Donnell, me. That was generally the lineup.
Nice.
And I started working within that lineup, and I learned a lot from those guys.
I bet. How did you actually settle in on your, so you're just testing out the stuff, you're learning from these guys. How do you, when about did you settle in on your current style of sort of the angry rants and the gritting teeth and the pointing the finger? Like, when did that sort of coalesce?
All of that followed from just yelling. Everything else I wasn't conscious of doing until people pointed it out. I'd never really had been that. I'm still not very conscious physically of what I'm doing, except from time to time. And then I go, oh, wow, I can't believe I'm doing this. But I was a friend of mine, another comic, a friend of mine who's a friend of the opening act, who's going to be with me in D.C., who's been working with me for years, John Bowman, and his friend Dan Ballard came up to me after I'd done a set downstairs at the club that we had in New York, the West Bank, and said, God, you're angry. He said, you should be yelling this stuff. He said, I'm yelling my entire act. I'm not even angry. You're the one who should be yelling. I need you to, so when you go back on stage, start yelling. And I did, and it was like, okay, here we go. That was it.
Wow. So it's
hard to find. That comic persona that people that's the tough part.
So it's a legit anger. You just play it up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean it's a legit. It starts as anger, but you can't really be really angry,
right?
Or people just leave. But from time to time, I'll point it out. I'll find myself standing there yelling and screaming about something, and then I'll have to go to the audience. I'm sorry, I've gone too far.
Well, it's worked out. I mean, it's been an awesome little brand. I mean, literally 1 million kids are going to know you as Anger in Inside Out.
Yeah.
Memories of working with that whole vocal cast. I'm sure you guys aren't all in the same room on those animated projects.
None of us were. I mean, I think Amy and the late Gus Smith, Lois, what's her name? God.
Yeah.
Phyllis.
Phyllis from The Office. Yeah.
Yeah, Phyllis and Amy may have worked together. I think, because of they had a lot of stuff. The rest of us that I knew of, we were all doing it at different times.
But what is that? What do you think? What's that like to know that a bunch of kids are going to know you as the fire flaming out of your head? But also, the movie's pretty deep. I mean, it kind of breaks down our mental processes in a lot of ways, and I'd like to see how that's applied to Pennsylvania Avenue.
Yes, it'd be nice. It was. Well, I mean, the thing that they kind of go, it's one of the things that's kind of like, we're not going to pay as much because you're going to be immortal. So, it's like, well, the jury's still out. But I was really thrilled because of what you said. It took me. I say, but it took my generation. I don't think even knew it had emotions until we were into our late 30s.
Right.
It was mostly like, I'm hungry, or I've got to take a pee.
Right.
And that was it. And then, but to be like, and parents have said it to me, that their kid will go, that the kid now has some sense of what they're feeling. We never had that.
Right. That's true.
And it's huge. And it's huge to know it early on.
Well,
as opposed to me spending the last 20 years seeing a shrink about it.
Yeah, you could have watched it as a kid in animation.
Yeah.
Well, if they ever do a sequel, maybe you can play Hunger or Pee.
Yeah, exactly. I can certainly play either very well.
A lot of practice.
Yes.
He's like, I had both during this interview. Well, before you run, I got to ask you about, because I think when I first discovered you was on all those Daily Show segments, Back in Black. I know you did it with John, and I think you've continued it with Trevor Noah.
Yeah, I'm still on.
How much did you enjoy? First of all, how did that come about? Did Stewart contact you? Did he see you on the stand-up scene?
No. I started with Kilborn.
From the beginning.
From the very beginning.
Oh wow! Well, what's sort of what do you think the legacy of those segments is going to be? I mean, I love it's like it's like your stand-up act, but in miniature, you know?
Yeah, I think it'll. Hopefully, it's. I mean, it's. I don't really know what the legacy. Some of them are pretty. I think have some legs and can be around. You know, a lot of them are just throwaways. You know, apply to the week we were in, and that's good. But
right.
You know, but what was, you know, really in a lot of ways what it was as a comic. You know, it was like, especially early on, and I was touring the country. It was like having an advertisement on.
True.
TV every week. You know, here's my 3 minutes.
The one that really lodged in my brain was Glenn Beck has Nazi Tourette's.
Yeah.
That was a great one.
Yeah, no, that was a good one. You know, it was. You know, it was just. It's just been a lot of fun to do it. I mean, and to continue to do it is really great. You know, I don't know how much longer, as long as they, you know, want me. And it's nice to be, you know, it's me and now it's like I started there as a kid, and now it's me and a bunch of kids.
Definitely. I think the last time you were here, or at least the last time we talked to you on TOP, was with, you were coming to Warner Theater with, it was the late Dick Gregory and Tom Smothers. And I just think I think DC was lucky that we got to see him before he passed. So
Boy, he was great. It was great to be able to stand off stage and watch him and spend a little time with him because, you know, I keep forgetting. People say, who are your influences? And I constantly keep forgetting to say his name just because I'm so used to saying da-da-da-da-da, and but he really was a huge influence. Probably I don't say it because I don't think I ever really have felt that it's someone who does what people describe sometimes as, you know, socially relevant humor. I don't think I ever reached the levels he reached. He was profound.
Awesome. Well, bringing it back around to this year's tour, Joke's on Us. Why should our listeners come out?
Because I desperately need the money. No, I think if you've been spending the year losing your mind, it's nice to be in a room filled with people who have all lost their minds this year and laugh and weep about it.
It's cathartic in a way.
I think so. I think it's like going to a psychotic church service.
You should put that on your posters.
That'll be next. That'll be next one. That'll be the next one when I really start to make the Church of Psychosis.
The future star of Hunger and Pee. There you go. The next poster writes us up. All right, Lewis Black, thank you. You've been more than generous with your time. Thank you so much. Again, everybody, Warner Theater, May 17th through the 19th. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, it'll be great. And I'll tell you the other reason to come out is I'm really comfortable in that space. You know, we did I think one of my best specials was done there, and the Red, White, and Screwed we did, and it's just a great space to work in. It's terrific, so I look forward to it.
Well, we love to have you back on your hometown station of TOP. I'm sure you grew up listening to it. So.
I did, and it's been a pleasure, and thank you for the time.
All right, thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for joining us on Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Remember to hit the subscribe button and give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time. I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the DC area is great, and Podcast DC gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play, listen local with Podcast DC.